Hi, we are here at South by Southwest EDU with Jeff Young. Jeff, can you introduce yourself and your role?
Yeah, hi, Jeff Young. I'm a reporter and an editor at EdSurge. We're a national nonprofit news organization. We cover education at all levels, and I also host our weekly podcast, the EdSurge podcast, where we tackle a lot of big questions facing, as education is changing, a lot of change going on.
And some of those big questions, as you mentioned, focused on higher education and technology.
Oh, yeah.
How did you get into this line of work and why is it important to you?
I started off wanting to be a tech journalist. I've been doing this a long time, so it was like early days of the internet, and colleges were the incubator of like a lot of the coolest tech. It's where the internet was like first young people had access to it, and it's hard to imagine these days. But so I really wanted to be a tech reporter and found my way into like education as a place to do that. And then I just really fell in love with covering education and was at the Chronicle of Higher Education for a long time and moved over to EdSurge about 5 years ago and have been able to like keep really focusing on how teaching is changing, what is college mean? Like, why do people need to go? What is it? So I just have fallen in love with the topics.
And your panel at South by Southwest yesterday focused on whether or not college is valuable. And so what would you say to a student or family who is having this debate? Is college going to be, am I going to get a return on my investment by going to college?
Yeah, no, and we like kind of had a very pointed title. It was like, what is the college is a scam kind of narrative that's out there? How is that impacting how people feel about college? Are they more skeptical? And if so, like, is that stopping certain people from going? So I think we're hearing, we see the surveys, the number of people that are skeptical about college has gone up a lot in the last 10 years. And so, whereas like 10 years ago, something like, 74% of students thought college was very important to go to. 10 years ago, it's not that long ago, and now it's like 41% in the same kind of poll. So is college very important? And I think I hear, and we're doing a lot of coverage at EdSurge, and I'm doing a podcast series now called Doubting College, where we're digging in. Like I've been going to a high school where I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, and like talking to students and counselors about like, how are they thinking about this choice? Like, and there's a lot of, kids that are totally college ready, and they're at a school that is, totally prepared them, but they're not sure if they want to go, and they're not sure if they need to. And so what is that about? And I think there's a lot of questions, they're literally Googling, like, can I get the job I want without going to college? Do I really need to do this? Is the debt going to sink me? There's a lot of worry about debt. And these are valid concerns. And I think students, we have to talk more. I think families want more answers around these questions than they used to, because I think the cost is, it is actually higher, but I think also people are asking maybe better questions about like if I'm going to go, like, what is the plan? What am I going to, get out of it? I don't want to switch majors 10 times and have to go for 6 years if I can possibly go for 4 years and get out of it with a job that I'm excited about going into. So I think what I'm hearing from guidance counselors and from students is like just a more like a savvier consumer, instead of this idea of like, oh, I hope I get into a college so I can, pay all this money and go. It's more like, do I want to go? It's like you're more of in a shopping mindset of like, what kind of college do I want to go to? Is it 2 year? Is it 4 year? Do I want to take a gap year first and figure it out and work for a little bit and save some more money? Or do I want to, less of this feeling of like everybody's got to go right away and follow this one path?
So picking up on that idea of being a savvy consumer, what can I as a high school student do to ensure that I'm selecting a college that will give me a return on investment, a college and a major perhaps? And then also, what can I do as a college student to ensure that I am getting the most out of my college experience to get that return on investment?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think those are great questions. And I think the trick is, as a reporter covering this and thinking back to my own college, like in some ways there is this like, college does a lot of things. It's not just about, even like people do want to get a job. I totally respect that. And you want to make it worth it. But like when you're at that phase in your life, if you go right after high school, you're also just in a coming of age time, and whatever you do with that time in your life, you're going to be like figuring it out, a lot of things out about adulting is one of, I hear that word a lot, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, some of us feel like even as adults we need to learn that, but like, like you're learning so much at that age of like being independent and sort of figuring out who you are. And I think colleges do a lot of that work in a lot of good ways, whether 2-year or 4-year. And, we don't hear about that aspect as much, but and so on one level, like I want, it seems like you still want people to have that time and college as a bubble to do that. But I think with the cost, what I'm hearing more and more is that there's more pressure to work, to pay for it. So there's a little less of that time to just do every club you might be interested in. And the things that are the non-academics that because you at that age you may not know yet what you want to do. And I think that's the trick. Is like, if I'm talking to people right now in high school, they're 17, they're going to college, they're 18. You're like, when I was that age, I didn't have all this stuff figured out. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. But at the same time, with you do want to kind of have some sort of, plan or thinking through it. And so I think balancing that, and like one of the things I'm asking people is like, well, if you had that experience as a person that's an expert in higher ed or something, how do you make sure that young people of all types and of all incomes have that experience to figure it out and have a place where they can try to find out who they are and what they want to do with their lives, but not go into debt and not have to take so long to go through college. And I think that's where I think there's a lot of talk about like how can guidance counseling improve at the high school level, at the college, and career counseling improve at colleges, so that there is more support beyond just academics. And I think you see some colleges responding to that a little bit. But I think, to me, I don't think I'm really answering your question, unfortunately, but these are the questions that we're asking about around like, how do you make sure there's equitable access to that exploratory phase, even as you talk about fast credentials and making sure people don't spend too much money, valid too and important. So it's like, how do you make sure there are high quality experiences that are equally accessible and that give people a space to grow? Because to your other point about like, what is advice to like get the most out of college? One of the things that I tell everybody, and I've done a little bit of, adjunct teaching at a college, is like office hours, like meet your professors, somehow like get to know, like they want to meet you. They, like create these systems like office hours. Sometimes they sit and no one comes, and like they really want to spend time with students and, get to know how to make sure they're helping and like learning themselves about what students want. And I feel like if you think about it, like some of the opportunities you have in college, you don't even know what they are, but if you start to meet mentors and experts that you're like a professor, choose a class that you're excited about, find out who's like the best teacher on campus, like by reputation and in something you're interested in, and then like go meet them and make sure they know who you are and what you're about. And then that's the kind of thing that later on, I mean, they will know, they could write you a recommendation letter, or they can be like, hey, I know that you're interested in this. Did you know that there's this scholarship, like there's like this research, paid research position you could get? Or, those are the kind of things that I hear from so many people that transform their lives and like change their career path. And it's because and it's not that much work. Like I think it can be intimidating to talk to a professor sometimes, but those are the kind of things where, and that's what I hear most is like to be, getting the most out of it and really connecting with as many students too on student projects and to the professors.
Some really great advice. And so how does this narrative that college may not be worth it, which, we of course at Philly Goes to College would challenge, but how does this narrative that college may not be worth it impact who is on a college campus?
Yeah, I think we're trying to figure that out. I mean, I don't know. I think you're probably talking with some people that have better data policy-wise on that. I think there is a concern with a dip in community college enrollment after the pandemic that these are obviously colleges designed to be access points to all kinds of people who might be first generation or trying to do that American dream of like using education to to advance and go new places and go beyond. So it's, I think that is a stat that people are paying attention to, but there is a sense that maybe things are changing a little bit there, and maybe there is. So I guess it is like a moment where like, is this are people so skeptical that they're really going to change their behaviors, or have we seen some smart gap yearing? I don't know. It's hard to know for sure. And the other thing is, like, it's never too late to go back to education. And, there are 40 million Americans with some college and no degree who, a lot of them really want to finish. And so there's no reason to, I hear a lot of stories about parents when their kids get just a little bit older and a little more independent, and they're going to college, the parents going to college too. And sometimes that can be a really exciting thing for a family to like do together. So I think that that's the nice thing about some of these stats is even if they're down, that's not to say that that's the end of it. And that, because more and more you are hearing that you might have to reskill as somebody, even like me, anybody, like just that even if you currently have a job, like you may need new skills, you may need to go back to school or may not be a full-time thing, but how are we all thinking about like a lifelong education instead of just this one moment in life?
All right, so our final 3 questions we are asking everyone.
Okay.
So first, what is your best college memory?
Oh, wow. I mean, so many good college memories. These moments with professors where they knew who I was as a person and like saw me and like were able to say like, I think this would be interesting for you. I think those are the moments that I had a couple great professors like that who like, I felt like they cared about me and they believed in me, and that I think that is like the answer. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to your high school self if you could go back in time? And it can be about college and career, or it can be about anything.
Wow. So back in time to myself. I think maybe just, wow. I don't know exactly the best way to tell myself this, but I think, I think that it is probably similar around like just like savor the kind of like projects and not so much about the grades, but about the how can you really try things out, because this is the time in life to like try things you may not even want to do. Some of the things I do remember most are like taking a photography class where I was in the darkroom all the time. I'm not a photographer. That's okay. Like, I think I got so much out of that, and it's just learned a different way of thinking. And like to do even more, I wish I had done even more of those things, of like stuff that absolutely isn't going to be my job, but is like the stuff you remember in the end, because whether I did well on that math test or not is forgotten, but these other things are totally things I remember.
Okay, and our final question, what is one thing that you are taking away from this year's South by Southwest EDU, something really exciting or interesting you heard that you are taking with you?
Yeah, I think, this one does relate to this topic. Like, one of the things that came up at the panel that I was really struck by is that, there's this idea of like, okay, people are hearing that college isn't worth it, or that might not be, and they're like asking tough questions about, am I going to go? But I think there's this, we talked a lot about during the panel about like, well, what is the message that would help convince people to at least think about it and not be totally like just dismissive of education. But I'm like, okay, the message is one thing, but it's also the messenger. And like, how do we think about like where students hear about college, not just from the Career Center or counselors, and I don't know the answer to that, but I think the messengers are going to matter a lot, whether that's people in their lives, like, aunts and uncles or cousins or whatever, is maybe going to be more impactful. And so I think this idea that you can have, just the people who advise people formally on career and college is, those messages are there for sure, but it seems like what are other avenues? And something that came up at the panel was like, for returning adult students, maybe it's like working through labor unions to like think about do people know about the opportunities for getting a degree in something, or just things that are not necessarily the way you think about, like, oh, this is where you hear about education, but how are the messengers, are there new messengers that could be kind of talked to or thought about? So
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
thank you.